Changing the Sales Game on webtalkradio.com. I'm your host, Connie Whitman, and my guest and I are very excited that you're joining us this week. So here's the deal, right? I know the word change in the show, changing your sales game. We're all looking to change something, whether it's career, whether we're in sales, whether we're a division head and a leader of sales. Change can be really, really hard. And to help you navigate change, because in my career, I have, maybe even in my life, I've realized that change happens when we communicate at a much higher and effective level. So in the show notes, you'll see my communication style assessment, my gift to you. You'll get 2 reports. First one will just spotlight your natural communication superpowers. So when you communicate, how does your message land? That'll be the first report. The more important report, I believe, is your lowest score, which typically are blind spots. So when you're communicating with someone who speaks 100 or communicates 180 degrees different than you, how is your message landing there? And that's where conflict happens. And I believe that we can navigate conflict resolution a heck of a lot more easily. So take that link in the show notes, take your little quiz, and I hope you enjoy the results. Now, my quote today is by Roosevelt Thomas Jr., and it sets the stage for my conversation with my guest and I that we're going to have today. So his quote says, "Let's stop believing that our differences make us superior or inferior to one another. A diverse mix of voices leads to a better discussion, decisions, and outcomes for everyone." So this quote really moved me when I find it. I feel like it's extremely relevant and timely in what the heck is happening in our divided world. Now, my opinion is right. Yours is wrong, right? Is what we hear being screamed from the rooftops, which really is kind of an awful approach to communication. And maybe even more important, the collaboration where we can do a better job together. Diverse thinking creates that friction, which I believe is a really good thing. This is where the conflict resolution happens, allowing for new innovations or combined thinking to happen, which helps us at the end that we could up our game and just do a better job. The reality is that we all have our opinions based on our filters, our perspectives, how we were raised, which are actually quite limiting. This means that most of life happens in the gray area where diversity and collaboration can actually create practical and maybe even valuable change. Yet many avoid the gray area so that we can be right. So who is my guest? I know, aren't you intrigued? This is such a good topic today. Well, my guest is my wonderful friend from the South, Allan Eaton. Eric recently shared with me that his bank has had 4 organizations, so 4 banks merge into one, and that was in about 12 months. So yikes, he still has hair, so that's a good thing. Now, Eric is hardworking, honest, determined, and just a self-motivated individual, which you will see for yourself. One of his missions in life is to leave the world in a better situation than he found it, and he enjoys seeing friends and family rewarded for hard work. He has over 15 years of branch and operational banking experience, probably more by this point, and 2 decades of stage and voice acting experience. He has a wonderful voice. I've heard him sing. Please help me welcome Eric to the show. So Eric, thanks for being on again. I think this is number 4.
I think so. Keep coming back for more. So thanks, Connie.
I can't get enough of you. You see, that's the deal. So, all right, you've just had 4, right, mergers in the past about 12 months.
Starting in about 2019, our bank announced that we had acquired, or we're starting the process of acquiring another location down here that was a Mississippi bank, but they also had locations in Alabama and Louisiana, which are our neighbors here in the Deep South. And the deal closed on April 1st, 2020, which many of you remember. That was not a funny April Fool's Day in the middle of a darn pandemic, but we made it work. So we were trying to figure out how to welcome folks who were already kind of similar to us culturally into the fold without going into a bank and making them sick. So that's kind of where we learned to start communicating in different ways, start doing things for support that may not look like your traditional, me going to a branch for a month and sitting with them, holding their hand. So that kind of was the first acquisition. Then we did another acquisition in 2022, still pandemic going on, but not as rampant. And so we also had between that time, we acquired a group down in the Mobile, Alabama market, which was essentially from another bank. So you have the original bank, the new bank from 2020, the new bank in Mobile, and the new bank from New Orleans, all in this big gumbo. Since we're in the South, we love a good gumbo. Trying to maintain our individual flavors, but also realizing that we're here to serve customers, serve our communities, and you can't operate as four institutions with one name. That may work for other subsidiaries and things like that, but as a community bank, you got to have one banner and one mission. And so that's been my goal. That's been my job. I've been paid to do for the last 4 years. And we're really, like we were talking off air, just really kind of getting started with the culture initiative over this last year. So yeah, four into one is what we do. We say power of one comes from four, but one.
That's exactly right. Now, so in an organization your size, right? You have what, about 1,100 employees,
Yep,
right?
exactly.
How collaboration, right, is really important. How did you take these four entities and did you do the best of the best, or did you take what you guys, right, the master,
Yeah,
the original bank, if you will,
sure.
was that where the vision came from, or was it really a collaboration of four?
It's been kind of a hybrid mix. So we learned a lot from the acquisition of the first group in 2020, where I think we didn't listen as much as we should have. And that could have been from the pandemic, not being able to say, hey, everybody, we're going to sit in a room of 40 people and spitball ideas until 1 o'clock in the morning, which we have done with other acquisitions since. But, I think we thought, because that was my first acquisition in 20 years of banking to go through. And I think it had been about the first real acquisition in 15 to 20 years for Bank Plus in general. So, the way that you acquired banks in 2005, much different in 2020.
Absolutely.
Technologically, different generations in the workforce, all sorts of things, really different opinions. What motivates people? We didn't ask those questions, and people don't think to ask those questions. It's kind of like we're buying we're buying this bank. We're going to put in our computers, our phone systems, our policies, our procedures, and the people are just going to do it, and they're not going to care about it. So you don't think to ask the questions of what are your customers that have been with you for 40 years going to think when you're no longer Bank X, you're now Bank Plus. So we've learned a lot over 4 years, learned to be more intentional about asking questions. And really, it goes back to the cliche of seek first to understand. That's really what we try to do on any acquisition. And, the banks are in growth mode now. You're either buying or you're just kind of consolidating or you're positioning to sell, from what I can tell.
Yeah.
So, I'm sure we've passed on some deals that were pretty good on the balance book, but may not have been a good fit culturally. And I love our leadership for taking that kind of intentionality to not add you can put one rotten apple into a barrel and ruins the whole batch. So
Absolutely. So a
yeah,
couple of things. I want to ask some follow-up questions with that.
sure.
The original bank that you guys bought, excuse me, in 2020,
Mhm.
and you kind of, hey, our game, right? Come on board. This is our
Yeah,
team, and start playing our rules. And again, I know that wasn't with malice, because I know you. You're amazing, right? You're an amazing human. So I know that wasn't our way, the highway,
right.
dude. Like, that's not the vibe. It's just we don't know any better. So we're the bigger organization. We bought you. This is what we're going to do. You said you learned from it, but did you get a lot of pushback from the employees, or were they just dutiful employees and kind of came over willingly, right? Or was there a bunch of
They,
crap that
that,
went along with it?
yeah. So that acquisition, they are, and I say they were because we're all one organization now,
Right,
but
right.
before we even acquired them, they were already similar in size, a few billion, a few million, 100 million less, smaller locations, but just spread out more. Their culture was already a small community bank from Mississippi. We were all founded kind of in the same place. They actually predated us to 1898, and we were 1909. So it was kind of
Cool,
those were household names for a long time in the banking
cool.
world.
Yeah,
So what we did is we did say, hey, this is how we're going to do it. We did listen some, but then we realized later on, and the COO of our bank now was the CEO of their bank then, and he's always said, he's kind of a mentor of mine, really. He doesn't know that, but he always says, if Bank Plus spent X amount of dollars to buy this organization and wasn't going to take anything that we were doing well, then they overpaid. And I like that idea because if there's an attractivity to buying an organization, maybe you could look at some of their policies and procedures and say, with our robust software and technology and staff, we could adapt these policies for efficiency because banks are judged on efficiency ratio. Everybody is in some ways. We just call it something different.
Yep.
But we've started to do that to say, hey, maybe our ways from 1909 aren't really the best in 2024. So how can we make this better? So we have been doing that with both technology, with culture, with human resources, with restructuring the way the branches look. So we know that the days of 10 tellers on a line, really, if you're not in downtown Manhattan, but even in Manhattan, they've gone away from the 10 tellers to more of a kiosk
Yeah.
coffee. Capital One Bank does the coffee thing.
Yeah.
So I mean, it's a blended. You got to blend and be hybrid and really listen to your customers, and then two, your employees, just to kind of stay ahead of. You want to stay relative, and so we've done a better job about listening, asking questions. After two acquisitions, we know that you can't just go into an area and say, hey, we're over here in Rome and you're way over there in East Asia. You got to fly our flag. And we're not going to even tell you how to fly it. We're going to send it to you in the mail, put it up. You got to be very specific about how you want things done.
Yeah, and we're dealing with humans. Your employees are humans. Oh, there's a concept, right? So everybody's dealing with something, Eric. And when you have an acquisition and now you have a new structure that you're reporting to, I'm telling you, the communication, internal communication, right? That negative record player. Am I going to be good enough? Are they not going to like me? My boss liked me. What if my new boss doesn't? They're consolidating. Am I going to get fired? And we work because we need a paycheck, right? Because we have college or tuition or rent, whatever it is, car payments. So if I'm coming in fearful that I'm going to lose my job, what ends up happening, and hopefully this was minimal for you guys, but you end up losing the good people thinking, I'm not going to put my life in your hands. I'm going to take control because I know I'm good and I could get the job out there that I'm looking for. So we end up by doing, like you said, doing it in a silo. Hey, we're the new boss in town. Get on board. The train's leaving the station. If you don't like it, see ya. You could end up losing potentially your real rock stars that are passionate about banking, are passionate about the clients, are passionate about living and breathing that culture, right? Did you find any of that? Maybe more with the first one than with the other three.
No, the middle one, when we acquired the Mobile Group, that was never really that was like a group of people that came from one bank. It's like we picked them up and they started this area down there. And it's a thriving market. Mobile is set to become the second largest port in the country at some point.
Wow, cool.
Personally, I was just driving through there, leaving the beach this past weekend, and you can definitely see that they are restructuring that port just to be that busy. So it's a beautiful thing. And of course, the bank's got a presence there. We didn't see so much issue there. And again, we haven't had issues per se, but there are some things that when you go in to a market, let's say like we acquired in 2022 a bank based in New Orleans. And I don't know how many of the listeners on here have been to New Orleans. It's a beautiful, wonderful, hot, sticky, below sea level, prone to flood, jambalaya of cultures, and it's a wonderful place. It is definitely part of the Deep South, but very much so its own little metropolis. Even in Louisiana, there's different parts of Louisiana, and New Orleans is kind of its cultural hub. But we all adopt it here. It's only a 3-hour drive from me here in Jackson, Mississippi. But I have New Orleans roots, so it's great grandparents lived there for a long time, and a bunch of cousins and great aunts and great uncles. But so when you go into a market like that, coming from a small farming community bank like we are here in Mississippi, you really need to send people who know the land. And you could apply this to Northeast banks. You could apply this to Midwest. You don't want to send somebody from a Chicago bank over to somewhere in like Idaho or something like that, or Montana, because the big city and the big range are totally different.
Yeah.
So you'd want to take some time to find out who you want on your team when you're going to start collaborating, even if you're doing an acquisition. So fortunately, they knew that I have some New Orleans roots and love the city. I've been there a bazillion times growing up and still have family down there. And so I moved down there for a month to New Orleans during that acquisition and
Nice.
worked in their home office. And I don't know much about the systems, or I'm a people person. I'm a culture dude. But I was working on some special projects then. But they knew that if I didn't know the answer, could pick up the phone and call somebody. You don't want to send your subject matter expert from your operations team down there for a month. They're needed
Yeah.
back running the main ship,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah.
So putting together a team of folks who really just know how to approach people, be with people, because I can guarantee on day one, they couldn't care less what your policy is about this or what your mission statement or vision and values. They want to know how to print a check for a customer, how to cash a check for a customer and not cry. Or if they do cry, that you can sit there and hold their hand or go get them a king cake or whatever while they're crying. So, you got to have relationship people, not just people that know the widgets and the buttons. Those are important. But if you take somebody out of their comfort zone, that's really more of an operational mindset. They're more of A, B, C makes D. Move on to the next pile. If you take them out of that, and say, I need you to go down to New Orleans, which is a big city. You've never been there before. Live in a hotel for a month. You may hear about crime and you've got to walk to work and all that type of stuff. Plus, let me go ahead and tell you this for the New Orleans people that have never been. You need to you need to kind of learn how to pronounce some of the street names because it is French-ish, but it's definitely Louisiana-ish, Cajun Creole. So I mean, you've got all sorts of funny street names down there. And you start saying things, they'll kind of point it out to you. It's like going to France and not trying to speak French. They all speak English, but they want you to attempt it. So, so you got to learn some of the street names down there. But
I love it.
it's good. But the tongue in cheek part is over. But you have to be intentional about it and make sure that you're sending your best choice to help do that type of stuff. So,
And go ahead. I'm sorry.
no, you go ahead, Connie.
I was going to say, Eric, it's everything you just said. Yeah, common sense. Common sense isn't so common, unfortunately,
No.
because we have egos involved, right? We're buying you. That's where that us and them. You have the employee. I'm sorry, I don't care what the communication style of every employee. There's still an element of fear that initially is there because change is hard, period, right? I don't think, I embrace change. I know you embrace change, but when that initial where this is going to change and you think, uh-oh, that first instinct is uh-oh. And then you get your head wrapped around it. Some it takes longer, some it's quicker. And the other thing you said that I think is critical is who are our people, not our necessarily best experts in the topic, but who are our best people to help that transitional process to make people feel it's going to be okay. So that the soft skills really are so important now. And we forget, right? It's all about the technical skill, and technical skill probably accounts for about 15% of our success. Our communication, our interpersonal skills, and our self-management skills are more important than the technical. Because you said it before, they knew to send you because of the roots and you understood the culture, which was really brilliant that they had you, number one, right? Sometimes we don't have the person that's already entrenched in that community. So that was brilliant. But number two, that you knew, I don't know, let me make a phone call. I know who to call right on the mothership, so to speak. I don't know why I bought it. I got a new computer. I don't know. If you're watching on YouTube, fireworks just happened. No idea why that happened. I have a new computer.
I just have
Because I'm with Eric and fireworks happen when we have our great conversations. It's so funny. But I do think that like breathe, who's our best person, boots on the ground, and then how can we leverage that instead of just you're our expert, you're going to go. I think more thought has to go into these things. Here's another question. How does Bank Plus, again, New Orleans versus the Mississippi culture itself, the community culture, how do you ensure diversity? And when I say diversity, right, because you have diversity, it is what it is. People from New Orleans versus Mississippi, there's a diverse group of people. For me, it's more of the diversity of thought and conversation. So
Yeah.
how do you guys tap into that level of diversity for Bank Plus to flourish even more?
Well, I think yeah, your diversity is such a diverse word, ironically. But yeah, so I mean, Mississippi, Alabama, Florida, and Louisiana all are considered southern states. But then you get into what constitutes the deep south, which is Alabama, Mississippi, Louisiana. But then you get into what's the heart of the south. You get into all these things where you get kind of a more of an epicenter thing, and the customers are totally different. I mean,
Yeah.
you may have a branch on one side of the state line and 10 miles away on the other state line, fundamentally different desires, economics, the landscape is totally different. In Louisiana versus Mississippi, they have Napoleonic law there, which is they're divided into parishes, we're divided into counties. They have different probate rules, they have different estate rules, they have different property rules that go all the way back to the 1800s when Napoleon wrote all this for the Republic of France. So, I mean,
Oh,
it's all this stuff that you have to that you will find out later, but it's better to find it out ahead of time, especially in the legal world,
yeah.
because your customers aren't going to stop dying and passing on estates or getting divorced just because you've acquired a bank. Customers don't care. They expect they expect their bank to still be their bank day one. So Bank Plus has just had a natural diversity deal, and that comes with race, gender, all that other stuff that's traditionally diverse.
Yeah.
But we are, I like to say this, we're a bigger community bank now, but by bigger, I just mean we're in more communities. And that's kind
Yeah.
of my goal in mind as we grow in the next 20, however many years I'll be here, is I don't care how many states or communities we're in. I want us to still give the local leadership their free reign to operate within their hamster environment, if you will. You give them a glass area that's Bank Plus, and within the inside, though, they know their local customers, they know their local politics, their local flavor,
Yeah.
their business customers, they know how they like to do business. So yeah, I may walk into a branch in middle Alabama and there may not be any loan officers there because they know that they've got to go out to their customers. Whereas some parts of Mississippi may be busy enough, or down in Florida, down in Destin, where it's growing, the vacation market's still growing. They don't have time to leave their office because there are people out the door wanting to purchase property in the Panhandle. So you can't just say Bank Plus expects people to sit in their office all day, or we expect you to be out all day. You've got to let it become a hybrid thing, and the best people to make that decision are local leadership.
Yeah, and again, we there's such deep knowledge there, especially if they're multi-gen where their grandpa, live there, so you have this deep history, and we're going in and telling them, no, it's not, we're not doing it that way.
Right.
Really? Like really? And the other thing too that you said, and I think it's so important for any culture, especially for banks, right? In my world, and this is how I think, Eric, but I think
Sure.
health is the most important thing. If we're not healthy, mind, body, spirit, we're not going to be able to function and serve bigger in the world, right? Or
Right.
do a better job for our family, our friends, our communities. So that's number one. Number two, money. If we don't have money, we can't help. We can't do bigger, greater things out there, right? Be more philanthropic, all of that. So, but you need money to survive and pay your bills so you can
Sure.
thrive physically and all of those things. So bankers, I believe across the country have such a responsibility to our local communities. And if we don't tap into that local energy and thought process and generational information, we're shooting ourselves in the foot. And, me being sales, we're leaving so much money on the table because we're not listening to, and in your case, the experts in these community. These branch folks are the experts. So how do you not tap into that diverse knowledge that you just can't have because you didn't grow up in those communities? And again, I think we're penny wise, dollar foolish, that it's like, well, our way is the right way. Is it? Is it
Right.
for this community? Is it? It's like you said, sending Chicago out to some place in Montana, right, where you have the big sky versus the city life. It's a mismatch unless they grew up, obviously.
Yeah, yeah. I mean,
Yeah,
that's
a totally different vibe. So I think that diversity, we think of diversity as cultural, religious, but I think diverse of thought is giving the ownership to your local people. And you guys have done such a nice job. The other thing I want to just comment on my belief as well, you, being a community minded bank, I think is so critical because what somebody in the inner city is dealing with versus someone on a farm in Mississippi, you're dealing with very, very different things, right? Maybe crime and droughts,
yeah,
but it's affecting your family, it's affecting your life. So I just think being a community partner becomes a critical piece of for us culturally,
yeah,
your culture within the bank to really thrive again, because I don't think our customers are cookie cutter. I believe in customizing everything we do for every customer that comes in within reason, of
right.
course.
I think this is also speaking about collaboration doesn't necessarily mean inside your organization. I think you just said a great thing about, bankers have a responsibility, salespeople have a responsibility, but they all live in a community. And I think that's why it's so important to have a really healthy chamber of commerce model or Rotary or line, these clubs that
Yeah.
do more than just make a coffee group. I've been to a Rotary, not Rotary, I've been to a chamber recently where they are like on fire and they're highly involved in community development. And it's all the different industries from that town are together, the county really, and they're nailing it. And then I've been to some others where it's just kind of like, all right, well, we're going to hear from Miss Wilkinson today about the 300-year-old tree in her yard. Um, any questions? No. Okay. See y'all next month. And so you're losing, like you said, leaving money on the table. You're leaving community involvement on the table. It's all about collaboration,
Yeah.
and competition is not a bad word. So as a banker, I know that I'm here to push money. I take it in, I push it out, I help it grow, I help you finance your dreams. Well, if I just focus on the banking side of it, I'm leaving out my friends in other industries who can help my customer with other needs. So being a
Right.
relationship banker is all about knowing they've got kids going to college, they have cars to finance, and bank. If a dealership friend is at the meeting and they're offering 0% for however long, yeah, I want the money and the real estate, I mean, and the interest on it, but I know that if I'm strapping my customer, they're not going to pay my loan back. So why not push them towards the salesperson that's offering a better deal for them? And
Yeah.
I look at the banker, since I've come from that industry, as really the person that holds the toolbox,
Yeah.
really more of a financial advisor.
Yeah.
Even at the teller line, there's no small role in banking. No one says that you can't be someone's banker just because you're behind a glass or behind a line.
Yeah.
Um,
And
so that,
and think about it, your teller, it's not a small position. They have a lot of responsibility. And oh,
it
by the
does.
way, they see 8 out of 10 customers that are
Yep.
coming into the branch. So
They're the
they
face.
know if the kid is sick. They know if somebody had surgery. They know if someone passed away, right? They have the pulse. So if they're just a teller, like to me, that is so offensive when I
Right.
hear like, oh, it's just, that's
Yeah.
an integral spoke in the wheel of you delivering to your local community. And the other thing, I do believe that if we don't do the right thing at the end of the day as bankers, because money is so important to our clients, shame on us. And you see it all the time, with the bigger banks, and I won't mention the name,
Yeah.
but they were signing home equity loans and stuff like that a few years ago. I look at that and it makes my heart hurt. Like, how do you betray a client like that because of your numbers and the bottom line? When you start chasing the numbers, becomes a real slippery slope, Eric. We have to chase the relationship and support what's happening. And then you know what happens? Magic, because
Yeah.
we get back exponentially. Like you said, you send the client to a 0% financing, they need a car. They're going
Yeah.
to come back to you for everything else because you did right by them, right? It's
Sure.
it's building those relationships from integrity and honesty and all of those things. So it's funny being in sales when people find out they go, "You're in sales," and I go, "Yeah, it's love, care, and respect for me. I know I'm a dork, right?" But it's true. If we approach every client and every community from that love, care, and respect, we make more money and we do it more fun. We become part of the community. And now we're helping more people. Like, sign me up every day, right? It becomes an easy thing to do.
Well, what's the integral part of a sailboat? Sales. So I look at it that way. That's needed to move the boat forward. And so if somebody
Yeah.
needs something, you gotta give them, you gotta offer sales. It's not a bad word.
No, it's
There's just
not.
bad, there's just bad salespeople.
That exactly right. I agree. Last question. With
Sure.
everything going on in the world, what challenges are you seeing or foresee with this continued collaboration? I'm going to say within the banking industry specifically, although I think there's a ripple effect that all industries are involved. But do you see anything happening or challenges that you're facing?
I mean, besides the normal and listeners that are in the financial world, y'all get this, that, the banking is one of the most highly regulated industries out there. And that probably stems from some bad actors over the last
Yeah.
100+ years.
Yeah.
But, we're used to change happening every day. And with it being election year, we know there's going to be some form of change on the federal level. State level doesn't change that often in here in Mississippi and in the other southern areas we're in. We're really more reacting to what the Fed does. But what we're seeing, being a southern bank in southern places where, the standard of living down here, a dollar will go a lot further. We just don't have a lot of dollars apparently to go around. So we've got to make sure that we're addressing our employees' needs
Mm.
from a corporation, but also as friends and neighbors, to make sure that what drives me and what fuels me may not be the same desire as somebody else, or maybe from a corporate level, we've not done a good enough job of explaining why we're doing things this way. And now our leadership knows that they can't go into a closed door meeting or publish the board minutes for everybody to see, but we are trying to be more proactive to explain the why behind things. And nowadays, when people can get online, and like you said, there's so many different generations in the workforce, you've got to find out what motivates folks, because what motivates a 21-year-old does not motivate a 61-year-old. I mean, we all enjoy the paycheck, but what you're willing to do to get that paycheck is vastly different. The hours that you're willing to put in and we all know that people waste hours during a day. I mean, I do it too. But, if I'm really, my boss and my bosses around the organization know that I'm going to do the job. They don't have to stand over my shoulder. They don't have to ask me how I'm doing it as long as it's legal. They just know the job's going to get done. And that comes from 20 years of doing this industry and knowing how it works. But you asked, all the stuff, all the noise that's outside is always been there. I mean, there's always been political strife. There's always been tension, especially here in the Deep South, with economics, with race, with gender, with, all these things that have just come out of the national fabric, specifically down here. That's always been there. It's just amplified now because it's 24 hours a day with Google, Twitter, 24-hour news. We just have to stay focused. That's where leadership comes in, to keep the ship pointing in the right direction and to make frequent announcements. Even if you're in rough seas, hey, stay the course, trim the sails, throw more coal in, shut more coal out, whatever. That's communication is the key.
It
And
is.
like you said earlier, you got to know your audience before you can even communicate with them. So
Yeah.
one message isn't going to be received by 1,100 people the same way. It never will. That's why firing out mass emails may hit 20% of who you're trying to hit.
Yeah. And
Even on LinkedIn, when you're trying to reach out to new customers or prospective customers, clients, whatever, it's better to kind of have several different versions of an email, because I on LinkedIn I get approached all the time, and it's really kind of a canned approach, and those usually get deleted because that's
Yep.
just not. I'm more of a relationship person. I'd like people to say, "Hey, I noticed you do stage acting. Let's talk about that. I've got a niece that acts." And I'm always like, "Okay, so we can have a conversation. It's not just going to be, how many widgets do you want today?" So
And you said something before, and it's so true. Yes, the vision has to always be about the customer. It's never about us. I really believe that. We have to flip the script from that perspective, but we also have to make sure that our employees are empowered and they understand the why. And I think the why is important. And then the last piece is we have to know what motivates our employees, because one person might be in a different financial bracket. So something frivolous might be very motivating, where the other one, if you buy them lunch for the week, that might be the best meal they get. So we
Sure.
have to understand what motivates our people, and it boils down, I agree with you, to leadership. And I think, and this is my career, Eric, the sales leaders that I've been exposed to before I opened my business, they should not have been leaders. Let's just leave it at that. They were horrific.
Sure.
They were in banking and they were widget counters. So they were forcing us to sell something to meet numbers instead of saying, hey, who did you talk to this week? What are you seeing? Are there any maybe trends out there that we need to address? And the other thing in my career, again, and this is bad banks if you do this, you know, you're in XYZ branch and you're in ABC branch, your home equity loans are the same. Meanwhile, you're in a residential and the other branch is in a industrial. Well,
Yeah.
why don't you flip flop some of the commercial goals, right, to the one who's in the industrial, and the more residential increase their goals? But it was this, oh no, we have to be fair. That's
Right.
unfair because we're looking to be fair. You're being unfair. That
Yeah.
we have to make sure that we understand who's doing the job and where are they doing it and what does the community need. So when we put the customer and the employee first versus the shareholders, and I know all the shareholders are going, we hate Connie Whitman right now, but if you put the customer and the employees first, the shareholders win every time.
Every time.
Every time. Yeah.
I mean,
Anything.
our
Go
bank
ahead.
is making money. We've been making money, and that's not a
God
bad
bless.
thing. People need to learn that profit is not a bad thing in this country. The ways that people go about earning profit may be bad, but the way we're doing it is just like you said. We focus on our employees, our customers, and then the shareholders.
Yep.
And we get very little top-down direction contrary to that.
Yeah. Well,
Everybody's
because they're making money, Eric.
everybody's making money. Everybody's happy.
What a concept, right? We could do it the right way and everybody could be happy. What? Like, really? Come on, let's do this.
This is
Um,
probably from the Northeast, but we hear it down here in the South a lot. A rising tide floats all boats. I love that quote.
Yes, I use that quote a lot. My other one is you use Stephen Covey's his fifth habit for highly successful people. I use it all the time. Seek to understand before being understood. He says it a little more eloquently, but that's another one of my favorites for sure. Yeah, we could do this together. Just let's be respectful. Let's communicate. See, again, it always goes back to the communication in everything we do. Yeah,
Every time.
my friend, I love you. Thank you for spending this time and sharing your perspective on how, because you're living and breathing it successfully. So by sharing that perspective, again, in your demographics and how you've addressed all of that personalization or customization to make you guys flourish is just such a joy for me to talk about because I want all the banks across the country to be doing what you guys are doing because you're doing it right and everybody's winning. So why don't we follow this model in banks, right? So again, I hope everybody enjoyed it because I don't think it's industry specific, even though that's our world, right? Banking. But I think the cultural development and the employee and customer focus, that's where we have to start. So thank you so much for sharing your experience and how you guys are doing it and how you're doing it well. I just think people can learn from that.
Yeah, I agree. Thanks for
Yeah.
having me.
Oh, always a joy, my friend. So listen, I'm going to give you the LinkedIn and email for Eric. Email is Eaton, EATONREB@gmail.com. That's his personal email. So if you have a question, you're going through something that you think Eric might be able to help, please reach out to him. He truly cares. He truly cares. He's one of my favorite humans on this planet. And I'm also going to put LinkedIn because he is on LinkedIn as well. And I'll put that link if you want to connect and just see what they're up to at Bank Plus. By all means, do that. My friend, thank you so much for spending time with me. Really, really, it is always a joy. You always make my heart sing.
Well, likewise, I always enjoy our time together and, cross country antics. So,
Yeah. It's true. It's cross country antics. Yeah, we just check in on each other. The one day I was thinking about you and you texted me first. You and the
yeah,
boys were in New
we're in
York
New York.
City
Yeah,
on the subway. They were looking very confident on the subway. It was just so cute. So we think of each other often,
right.
even though we're from very different worlds. We're still the same, I think, at the core. So thank you again for just sharing your zone of genius with my peeps.
Anytime.
Alrighty. And I hope you will join me weekly as we question, build, and discover together, no matter where you are, on changing your sales game or changing the game within your organization. I truly hope my guests and I provide tips, ideas, strategies, our stories, some tangible things that you can take and actually put into practice or start to talk about with the decision makers within your organization. Change is easy if we communicate through it. I think we get in our own way and make it more difficult. So your call to action, right? Information's a beautiful thing. If you do nothing with it, it's just information in your brain. As soon as we put it into action, really magic does happen. And everything Eric and I talked about today can happen for you. So please take one of the tips, ideas, strategies. Bottom line, start communicating more effectively, whatever that means for you and your organization. Eric, thank you again. Thank you for tuning in. You've been listening to Changing the Sales Game with me, your host, Connie Whitman, on webtalkradio.com. I really am inspired and honored to have you on this journey of changing your sales game. And it motivates me every week to get good guests like Eric so that we can help you move your needle forward and make change a smidge easier. I love you all. I'll see you all next week. Have a great one, everybody. Thanks again for tuning in.